Welcome to DIY concrete countertops. Now, I certainly won't claim to be an expert on the subject of concrete countertops, although I have poured a few. So if there's just one or two tips offered up in this video that help you with your project, well then I guess it all will have been worth your time. So sit back and enjoy the show. This is a real concrete job for a real customer. This is not a filmed for YouTube production. If you want something that watches like a TV show, you're watching the wrong video. Feel free to pause and read the script as I tried to keep this video moving along. That said, hopefully you can pick up a tip or two. Alright, we built this form in the last video. We're going to start this video by wiping it out. I use a little bit of acetone on a rag, and then we're going to wipe it down with some paste wax. Some guys use different stuff, castor oil, baby oil. I prefer paste wax. Your form is really clean. You can set up your vibrators. Check out that video if you haven't seen that one. I prefer palm sanders mounted on a piece of plywood. I plug them all into a power strip, and that way throughout the pour I can just click on the power strip and it activates all of my sanders. Now remember, you want to pulse these on and off if it's what you're using throughout the pour. You don't want them to run continuously. What will happen is it will settle the aggregate out of the concrete mix to the face of the form. Alright, finishing tools. I have three go-to trowels. The first being a margin trowel, which is very handy for detail work. I prefer a fiberglass or a resin float, and a finishing trowel with a square back, and I typically round the edges slightly on my grinder. Okay, obviously we're going to need a screed, and a hand tipper is also a nice addition. As far as mixing goes, there's no real right or wrong way. You'll need to decide what best works for you based upon the amount of time that you'll have, the amount of help that you'll have, and your budget. How much concrete do I need? Figuring out the volume. Length times width times height divided by 1728. There's 1,728 cubic inches in a cubic foot, and cubic feet contained is typically printed on a concrete bag. Just remember, you can bring an unopened bag back, but you don't want to stop the pour to go get more material. A very important thing to remember when pouring concrete on a warm day is to cool everything down. This is hot right now. Our water temperature is going to be really hot from hose laying out in the sun. So what we're going to do is we're going to spray everything down and let it cool. Another thing that we're going to do is for our fiberglass, we're going to pre-soak it so that it doesn't absorb any extra water. Always combine and mix dry ingredients first. This aids in dispersion and is going to give you a much more consistent result. Never combine admixes in concentrated form, as they could have a chemical reaction. It's best to always dilute them into water. Concrete contains lime, which can cause your skin to really dry out and crack. It's a good idea to always wear a pair of gloves. This is a mix design I've had really good luck with, and everything listed here is commonly available at your local big box store. Now, there are specialized mixes available through companies, but the aim of this is to keep it cheap, easy, and DIY. Fiber mesh can be a great additive. If it's available to you, I highly recommend using it. There are a lot of concrete admixtures available also. Although definitely not necessary, there are three that even somebody inexperienced in concrete could benefit from: a shrink reducer, a plasticizer, and a water reducer. If you are interested in these, research them. They are also commonly available at the local big box store, or through many other online retailers, eBay, and of course Amazon. As noted earlier, we're going to use an off-the-shelf Sakrete 5000 mix. We're going to supplement in some raw Portland cement as well as some admixtures and fiber mesh to really bring up our end yield strength. Well, let's begin. We'll start by weighing out 5 pounds of dry powder. A bathroom scale works good for this. This is where you want to combine your two dry ingredients and let them mix.
Okay, now we've let our two dry mixes mix together without any water. Now we're going to add our first batch of water.
It's very important to remember when fine-tuning your mix consistency to always add water in small increments, as you can always add additional, but you can never take it back out.
Okay, now while my first batch is mixing, I'm going to go ahead and get my second batch of Portland cement and pad mixes ready.
This allows for the mixer to run the entire time, and I'm never left without concrete. Consistency should resemble a thick oatmeal, something that you could form into a ball. You don't want your aggregate sinking to the form face. You don't want soup. Remember, all water that's added to the mix has to come back through the top. It cannot permeate through the forms. I sporadically and randomly place my concrete throughout the entire pour. That way I never end up with two pieces with a slight color variation that are completely mismatched. 5-gallon buckets full of concrete can get very heavy. I recommend using 3-gallon buckets if you can find them. Take special note of that concrete's consistency. You can see it's pretty stiff. It's not dripping out of my hands. It's not runny. It stays in the shape that you form it into. I always like to begin by focusing on the detail work, such as sink, drain, and faucet knockouts. That way, as the concrete begins to fill the forms and I lose sight of those details, I know that they've already been handled. By special attention to detail, I'm talking about packing the concrete tightly around any special contours, making sure there's no voids, and any reinforcement that might need to be placed. This is the point in the day where my camera memory had filled up and I was concentrating so hard on the pour that I didn't notice in time. But as you can see, the outer sink mold is installed and the remesh is inside of the forms. Unfortunately, it was not caught on film. Take the time in between batches to really vibrate this concrete, whether you do it with a hammer or a palm sander or whatever. It's very important to consolidate that concrete in that form, work out all the air pockets, and make sure that it is tightly packed. This is also a very good time to start doing work around the faucet knockouts and the edges of the sink with that margin trowel, really paying attention to the details. These form braces are kind of an obstacle, but you can slide that margin trowel underneath. Now I'm going to rod off this sink form, and I'm going to push all my extra material towards the center and really force it in around that drain knockout to make sure that there's no voids or imperfections. This is an area that requires special attention. 3-gallon bucket for the win. This drain knockout is an area that requires special attention because drains fit in through the top and then they have a gasket on the bottom side, and that's your watertight seal. Therefore, the mating surface for that gasket needs to be perfect. Or you need to be a whiz with plumber's putty. Alright, we're coming down the home stretch here on the sink area, doing the final screed here. And done. Quick tip here, you can see with this margin trowel I'm scraping the edges of the melamine. That's always rich cream. There's never much aggregate in it because it gets squashed between the rod board and the form. So if you have small air pockets or small divots where you need just cream, that's a good place to pull it from. And don't be afraid to do work with that margin trowel. Paying attention to the details like this can make a job that was, okay, be a job that's, wow, that's really good. It's paying attention to the details that will get you that next word-of-mouth customer. If you feel like it's not quite right, or you're not 100% happy with it, take the couple extra minutes and do it until you're happy with it. Margin trowel, again, super handy.
Now that we're nearing the point of putting a trowel on top of this, we're going to tamp it one more time and force that aggregate down, which is going to make a world of difference in our final product. Give all these edges one more quick tap with the hammer. And again, the vibrator should be running on and off throughout this entire process. This is important in preventing bug holes. And bug holes are small voids that occur on the edges of the forms from entrapped air. They're not 100% avoidable, but you can alleviate the problem to a great degree with that extra vibrating. Now, if you're a concrete person, there might be a few different trowels that you would choose to put on here first. My first choice is a fiberglass trowel. Really like it, and it does a good job. Now, learning to read concrete and knowing when it needs what comes with experience, but typically it's pretty hard for a beginner to over-trowel concrete, but it's definitely possible to under-trowel it. Now, once the fiberglass float has done its job, it's time to move on to the finishing trowel. This is what puts that ultra-smooth finish on the concrete. Now, it should be noted that these are the bottoms of the countertops, but it still doesn't hurt to pay attention to the details. It's good to take pride in your work. Not to mention, the bottom side of a precast countertop is a great place to practice your finishing skills for when you want to do that pour-in-place countertop. You can see here I keep using the edge of the form as a grade reference. Don't lose yourself out in the middle of the form and create a bird bath. If you need to, keep using that form edge as a grade reference. Again, back to this drain. This is an area that does require special attention. Keep that in mind and keep working on it.
Now I can refer back to my notes again. This is an open edge right here. So that means you'll be able to walk up to the counter and feel the bottom of it. So I want this first 1.5 inches or so to be really nice. Now I've got here a water bottle with a very small pinhole in the lid, just to kind of help bring back some of that moisture.
Now, this is a technique that should definitely be used in moderation. It is possible to overwater it. Now here we are midway, looking pretty good, but definitely still needs a lot of work. Especially this area around the faucets, edges of the sink. Now, people very commonly store stuff underneath their sinks, and what I try to do is just cut a slight bevel on these edges. Now, nothing super drastic, and I'll definitely finish it out with the wet polisher. Now, I just want to say as we near the end of this video that this hasn't been a made-for-YouTube production. This is me filming myself, doing what I do for work, and trying to edit it into a video for somebody who might be wanting to tackle some concrete countertops. I hope you were able to glean some information, maybe a tip or two, and I hope you tune back as the series continues. Oh yeah, always cover those tops. Cover them at least overnight. I typically cover them 1 to 3 days. Thanks for watching. Hopefully there was something useful for you. Oh, and definitely clean your tools.